Hey guys, it's Ryan here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another review for a book. We're going to be looking at Soulsmith, which is book 2 in the Cradle series by Will Wight. I had not planned to read more than the first book in the Cradle series this month, but I'm nearly done with the third one because I had the Foundation book set. So that's the first book set. It got repriced again to $9.99. But it used to be free. It was free for a little bit while the Kickstarter was going on. But I got it for like $2 way back in the day. A few years ago, I didn't read it until recently because of the Kickstarter. I backed the Kickstarter, and they're still accepting money within the next 2 weeks as of today, I think. So if you pick up the book and you're interested in seeing an animation for it, I recommend you go to the Kickstarter page and donate some money to it. But yeah, so book 2, Soulsmith. It's a self-published book, like I said. Although, I think if you buy the physical copies, they're actually printed by Rarira Press, which is Michael J. Sullivan's company, because he had a falling out with Orbit, and he made his own publishing house or something like that. I think that's how that works. But although I really want physical editions of these books, for the sake that I like having physical media of things I enjoy, I don't think I will buy the paperbacks as much as I prefer paperbacks, because they're like the big versions of paperbacks, and I don't like those. I think if you had an option to have a mass market paperback, I would buy that instantly because I prefer mass markets. However, he does have some hardcover, some leather-bound hardcover editions, and I'm tempted to buy at least the first one. So we shall see what happens there. In terms of the demographic, I would classify this as a YA, although I honestly don't think that teenagers read these books. I think this is definitely something that's usually read by adults. At least everyone that I've ever seen review this book is an adult. Although that might be skewing because of the fact that YouTube is not really, like, children aren't on YouTube creating content, right? So I don't know. In terms of genres, this is a fantasy story. There's elements of sci-fi here dotted in, and they actually grow progressively more relevant to the story as time goes on. So in Black Flame, I don't want to spoil anything, but in Black Flame, I feel like, especially where I am right now near the end, the sci-fi aspects have grown exponentially more important than they were in Unsold. And of course, it's a cultivation novel, which means that you watch characters develop their power system by basically connecting with their spiritual self, right? So there's a certain element of Eastern philosophy here that is pretty interesting. I quite like it. Although basically it is just an anime world. So yeah, adaptations wise, it does not yet have one. However, the animation, and I think actually they settled for an animatic, which is basically storyboarding for a proper animation. And it's going to be about feature length, I think, because of the Kickstarter managed to successfully raise enough money for that. So that's what it's going to be. And I'm excited for it, but I think it doesn't come out until July-ish, like middle of the year, right? Although there is a sizzle reel coming that is supposed to come by sooner than that. So there are some elements to the story that are adapted in some ways, right? So yeah. And ratings-wise, is a 5 out of 5. I really enjoyed this book. I really loved the first one, but there were some issues with that one. And this one, I feel like none of the issues that I saw in the first one existed. And generally speaking, I had no issues with anything here. So I really, really enjoyed this one. Premise-wise, this is basically the beginning of Yeren and Lyndon's journey. They're out of the Sacred Valley, and they're into the Desolate Wilds. And our heroes kind of end up... well, in general, they're searching for ways to advance their spirits, right? They're trying to reach the pinnacle of the sacred arts, and for Lyndon, that means honestly that means advancing past copper currently, and also hopefully making it past gold eventually. And for Yeren, that means dealing with the fact that she just became gold, and she has to figure out a way to settle her mantra, now that she has this like extra element to it, right? So yeah, so they're searching for a way to gain more strength, and they're also kind of accidentally walking into a path that sends them into this crazy situation, right? So it's pretty exciting. I really enjoyed this book. I think that the idea behind this book is quite good. So yeah, in terms of plot line here, I'll try to keep it vague, but I am gonna go over like important things, right? So this is not a spoiler-free review. Basically, it starts with Yeren and Lyndon of the Sacred Valley, but super weak because, well, Lyndon specifically because his countrymen, the people in Sacred Valley, didn't advance past Jade usually, and it turns out that outside of Sacred Valley, Jade is basically what teenagers are supposed to be at. So Lyndon is stunted in a crazy way, right? And Yeren is weak in the sense that they have been fighting. They have not had time to rest and recover, and so that's the first thing that they do. They touch down somewhere. They set up camp. And Lyndon finally advances to Copper. This is actually basically the first thing that happens in this book. And it's very satisfying to see Lyndon, after you've learned of his struggles, to finally advance in a way that it's almost like ridiculously easy compared to the struggles that he thought he would have, right? And so I really like it. And it actually activates basically like mage sight. So he can see aura or mantra or aspect or whatever you want to call it, in the air now. So he can see, like, he can turn on this sense, this extra vision, sight beyond sight, if you want to call it that, like the sort of omens. And it allows him to see, like, the energy of the world, which is really, really cool. But he says that he has to kind of, like, look beyond, like he has to, like, unfocus his eyes, and that allows him to see. But then later on, it's not like that. So it's kind of curious how this works. And so he advances, he wakes from his advancement, and it seems that the camp has been attacked by 3 low gold snake vipers or sand vipers, something like that. They're basically, like, their vibes give me like Aiel vibes. But their dressing and the way they act gives me like generic Viking vibes, and I really like it. I think that this group of people is really interesting and cool, although they have horrible hygiene. Although they are like poison users, so it makes sense, right? And there's 3 low golds. However, Yeren and Lyndon, mostly Yeren, managed to win against them, and so they have to run away from the remnants. This actually ends up being like the first major moment where they get to have rest, where they actually managed to create a circle around this tree, and rest in the tree while the remnants kind of just like follow around the edge of the of this like script circle. Eventually something happens. All of the aura from the region gets sucked away rapidly. There's this massive influx of power far away from them, and everything turns in that direction, and every monster and thing that is in the woods goes towards it, and so they follow. They decide to go back and to their camp. They get their stuff, and then they go to this big thing. And here is where they realize that there's a camp in a giant motherfucking tower in the middle of nowhere, near this place called Pure Lake, which we don't actually go to, but is important because it is the only source of water for miles, right? It is almost like an oasis. And so they show up to this camp. And we get introduced to the 5-clan coalition, or the 5-clan embassy or something. I can't remember the name of it, but it's 5 groups of people that work together. However, I actually can only tell you 3 of them because I'm not really sure who the other 2 are supposed to be. So we learn about the Sand Vipers, who are the Viking people that I mentioned with the venom stuff. Then the Jai clan, who are basically light spear wielders. So imagine Garm from Vinland Saga, the guy with the spear, and that's basically what you get. Although they have black hair, not blonde hair, and they all have like wonky, hard hair. So it's like a defining feature of their clan. And finally, the other clan, or the other group that we meet, are the Fishers, and they have like these Kopesh swords, but they're actually kind of like beggar, like they have beggar vibes, but they also have this like really interesting like tendency to like hook things, and they're called fishers because they use their Kopesh sword things as like giant fishing hooks to drag people in. So they're really interesting. I really like how all of these people work, right? So very interesting. Yeah, so we get introduced to Jai-Sen, who tells us about this stuff after he attacks Yeren and Linden as they are arriving into the camp. And so they're taken in by Jai-Sen. They're brought to a place, and basically they escape because Yeren is like, I'm not gonna be associated with this guy. He was testing us, and now we pissed off one of his buddies. It's time for us to escape, right? So they do. However, they don't really leave town. They just kind of snub the J clan, which it's not a problem necessarily, but it definitely starts them off on the wrong foot. Through this, we also get to meet Ethan, or Ethan, or Ethan. I am not really sure how to say his name. I think Ethan is the right way to say it. Like, and he is this long blonde-haired guy, and he has these really fancy clothes, and he's just like chilling. He's just like relaxing around the place, and he's really interesting. I really like him a lot. I think he's great. I mean, I like him the most because of Black Flame, but in this book, he's still really enjoyable. So I recommend you guys pay attention to the stuff that he does. Let's see. Then we get introduced to Jai Long, who is actually the most important Jai clan member that we meet, and he happens to have a monster face for some reason. He's scarred in some way. And I thought that the scar, or the scarf that he wears to hide his face, was on the top of his face, but apparently it's at the bottom side of his face. So that's kind of interesting. I didn't really notice that. I didn't pay attention to that initially, but something that happened in Black Flame allowed me to remember or to know that fact. So be aware of that. And basically he's exiled from his clan, and so he works with the Sand Vipers, and he's friends with the son of the chief, whose name is Cradle. We learn most of this through a like an insert, like one of those information inserts that Will Wight does, which I think is a phenomenal way of doing things, by the way. I think that it's a very interesting way of weaving the story, and it also because it works really nicely, since it's basically Suriel that's reading all this stuff, right? Or at least I understand it to be Suriel who's reading all this stuff on her off time while she's kind of traveling between the areas that she's traveling to, right? And so we get this dictated to us, and so as Suriel is going through the files, seeing what's going on, she interjects information as needed. She kind of opens a second tab and does some Google searching while she's reading through the main stuff, right? So I like that concept. I think it works really, really nicely. Back to the main story, though. It turns out that the Black Flame Empire is sending the Aurelius family to inspect the stuff at the ruins or at the tower, and this is bad because the Aurelius happen to be more powerful than any of the people that are currently here. And so if the Aurelius show up, they're going to take all of the money and all of the resources that are available at this place, and so everyone has to move as fast as possible to get as much as they can out of it, so that the Aurelius people don't steal or don't take as much as they can, right? Because basically the ultimate law of the land is you can take as much as you're strong enough to take. So basically survival of the fittest to a ridiculous degree, right? And because of the Black Flame coming, everyone hurries, and Yeren and Linden end up meeting the Fishers, who are fighting. They having an altercation with the Sand Vipers, and through meeting the Fishers, we get introduced to Geisha, who is basically like a Lady Chio type character. She has puppets, and she's old as fuck, and she's kind of gruff, but she ultimately cares. And I like this character a lot, although she does something later on in this part of the story that I don't like. I think that I understand why, but I feel like she should have not done it. So, yeah. Linden goes to her. He's like, dude, this lady's a soulsmith. All I've ever wanted in my life is to be a soulsmith, and I have the opportunity to learn from one of the most interesting soulsmiths I've ever met, since she's the first one that I've met, not from my village, right? And so he goes to her, and he basically gets her to accept him as a student. However, she doesn't really treat him like a student. She treats him more like a servant, but in such a way that he actually learns stuff from her. So it works out pretty nicely for both of them. However, this actually ends up being a problem because Jai Long notices something important about Linden, which is that he has the body of a man, but the spirit of a child. And this is a problem. This is weird. And so he's like interesting, right? And so he sends some sand vipers to steal him away. And when they do this, Gesha steps in order to save him from becoming a minor, which is basically a death sentence at this point. And when she does this, she frees Linden, but Linden is too nice of a guy, so he wants to help the other minors. And so when he gets a little bit more power, when he gets a little bit more training from Gesha, he decides to rope Yeren into a coup attempt, basically, at the mines. And he gets in trouble. And Gesha decides to not step in for him this time because it is ultimately the best thing for her clan, right? And I agree with this. She didn't really take him into her clan. She just took him into her soulsmithing forge, I guess is the right word. But it makes me sad because, like, Linden didn't deserve that, right? Like, he deserves to have people fight for him because he's like great. And I guess he eventually does find those people, so it's fine. But and Gesha ends up being one of them. But I didn't really like this moment. It made me think that Gesha was not going to be important anymore. That she was going to disappear the same way Chai Sen did after her part of the story was over. And I'm happy that it didn't go that way. So eventually, Yeren and Linden are forced into the mines. And Ethan decides to slip in and be part of this situation as well. And eventually what happens is that the miners get attacked. Aiden pokes the bear, makes some of the sand vipers that are protecting them angry, and ends up causing a bunch of havoc. This leads to Aiden revealing himself to be an important member of the Black Flame Empire, but not telling them who he is exactly, and decides to take Linden and Yeren under his wing because he's looking for interesting disciples to take into his family. And so while they're in this ruin, he decides to lock Linden in a cave by himself where he must survive. And this is interesting and useful because it allows Linden to have the strife necessary to advance his body from copper to iron. And there's kind of a convoluted process here, but he lasts 2 weeks in this, in this cave. During those 2 weeks, Ethan and Yeren are fighting each other, trying to get Yeren to take control of the remnant that she took in from her master at the end of the first book. And after the 2 weeks are up, it turns out that the Black Flame delegation with the Aurelius has arrived, and the Sand Vipers and Jay Long have managed to breach the top of the tower, and so a fight ensues. But before this happens, we learn that every iron body is different. Every path requires a different iron body, and you need to craft your iron body properly. This is all new to Linden. He doesn't understand this. In his valley, iron is iron regardless of anything, and they laugh at him. They're like, dude, you're fucking stupid. Which, fair, I guess. And so Ethan gives him the technique necessary to create a wonderful iron body that heals automatically by cycling his energy through his body. And he does this by forcing Linden to get bitten by one of these sand viper things, and then channeling the poison through his body. Linden, because he's a psycho, decides that he wants to do with 5 of these sand vipers. And so he basically maxes out his abilities with this iron body. And to show you how crazy they are, Will Wight adds a scene where he shows the ceremony that the sand vipers actually use for this sort of ceremony. And they only use a drop. Whereas Linden is like using all of the venom and stored in one of these sand vipers and all of their blood, because that's the 2 components that you need, right? And so he does this with 5 whole sand vipers, which are basically, you know, these like snake centipede things the size of cats. And he's a psycho. He almost doesn't survive, but eventually he does survive, and he advances to iron. And so Linden is in awe of himself, but also more aware than ever that he is weak compared to everyone else. And so we move on. They manage to go to the top of the tower. Stuff ensues. Basically, Everyone starts fighting. Yeren is fighting Jay Long, and Lyndon freaks out. He's like, "Oh my god, all of this stuff here is awesome. I'm gonna steal a bunch of it for myself and use it for my Path of the Twin Stars." And then he ends up having to fight Crawl, and Crawl is a high gold, I think. He's not a true gold. He's a high gold, which is the second level of gold. And Lyndon manages to kill him. So Jaylon is like, "I am going to murder you." Ethan steps in and he's like, "Wait, he is part of my family. I am Ethan Aurelius. I am the Underlord," which is a tier above gold. So he's basically like royalty, but not quite, basically though. And Yeren and Lyndon are part of my family. They're my youngest disciples. They have been recently adopted. If you want to fight my little brother, he calls him, Lyndon, you have to do so in 1 year, and I will let you guys duke it out. But he, basically because of the honor system, Jaylon can't kill Lyndon without losing face, because Lyndon is iron and Jaylon is high gold, and so it's not basically it's not proper, because it's like taking advantage or abusing his power, right? And so they managed to create the situation and give a time limit, create a rival for Lyndon, all in one fell swoop, and I love it. I think it's so good. I really enjoy how Ethan fucking manipulates everything to work. I really like it. And so that's basically the end of the story. They clear out the pyramid, everything winds down. Ethan properly adopts Yeren and Lyndon and decides he's going to teach them. And so the story winds down, it ends, and that is the end of the second book. In terms of characters, we get introduced to Jai Sen, Jai Long, Crawl, Gesha, Ethan, who's my favorite introduced, and he might be my favorite character besides Lyndon, because Lyndon, like, I feel like Lyndon can't not be your favorite character. Like, he has to be your favorite because he has the most development, because he's basically the only character that has any development, right? But Ethan is just so weird, man. I think he's fun. Jai Sen felt unnecessary, in my opinion. Well, I understand why he was there. You needed to introduce the J clan and then introduce Jay Long afterwards, so that you could understand that he is basically the most prominent member of their clan, but he is not attached to them because of his disfigurement, right? And Jai Sen works as a way to introduce the J clan and what they're supposed to be like. However, Jai Sen spent too long on the page, in my opinion. Like, he was like introduced, and I thought that he was going to be an important character, and the fact that he wasn't feels like this character was wasted. He might come back later, I guess. Maybe, it's possible, but I doubt it. However, I understand why he was there. So I have a little bit of a complaint here, but it's not big enough to matter. And honestly, it's a complaint that I kind of started thinking about a few hours ago, not when I was reading the story. So, your mileage may vary there in terms of how you care about that. So, yeah, Lyndon manages to advance to Iron. So that's 2 advancements in 1 book. That's awesome. It's probably the only time it's ever going to happen, I think. Actually, I don't know. I haven't finished Black Flame, and I can't remember the sequence of events. So, I don't know. I think it's the only time that happens in the books that I've read so far. Yeren gets no advancements, but she does grind a lot. So she has, some development there. And we get to learn a little bit about Yeren herself. She has severe abandonment issues, and she's actually just looking for a family. So, or something close to a family, something that she can associate with, the fact that someone will protect her the same way that she wants to protect someone. And I really like her a lot. I think this humanizes her a lot. It makes her much more vulnerable and accessible as a person, and I really appreciate it. Lyndon is just so nice and good and wonderful, and he says apologies and gratitude and all this stuff, and and he's such a great guy, but he's also so greedy in a way that is fun and interesting. Although it does kind of pull back the way, like the important thing at the end of the first book is, I need to leave and grow strong so that I can come back and save my village. However, in this book, it didn't feel that important that he had to come back to save his village. At this point, it feels like that excuse has kind of withered away, and is just stuck with the fact that he wants to be strong because he thirsts for this since he's never had the opportunity to have it, right? And I don't think this is a problem, although I'd like a more direct acknowledgement of this fact. So there you go. And Ethan is hilarious and ridiculous and so insane, and I love him. I think he's great. World building wise, we learn about golds. We learn that they're a tier above jade, and that there's 3 different levels to gold. There's low gold, high gold, and gold and true gold. And every gold gets a gold sign, and your gold sign can be anything. However, clans usually try to have gold signs that are the same. So all of the J clan people have a similar gold sign. Most of the Sand Vipers have a similar gold sign. Most of the Fishers have a similar gold sign. They're all supposed to be very much the same. And a gold sign is what you get out of absorbing a remnant. So this means that in order to get the similar gold sign, and in order for it to kind of be part of your clan, it essentially means that these people cannibalize the spirit of their ancestors in order to have these similar gold signs, right? So Jay Long, for example, was supposed to take on a remnant of an elder from the J clan, but due to a crazy set of circumstances, he had to take on the remnant of someone else's clan or someone else's spirit outside of his clan. And so it didn't merge with him the way that the normal gold sign does, the way that normal remnants do. And so he ends up with this crazy disfigurement, right? But it was for a good cause. Basically, his sister was being attacked, and her spirit was broken. So she's even worse off than Lyndon was in Unsold. And in order to save her, he had to take on the remnant from this other person, which is why he is disfigured, right? So very interesting stuff. I really appreciate that. There is a physical determining factor that tells you, oh, this person is gold. And it seems like your gold sign grows the stronger you are. So if you're a low gold, your gold sign might be something basic. And then as you advance throughout the gold stages, your gold sign gets bigger. Let's see. Above gold, there's Underlord or Underlady, and that is the level Ethan is. So he is like miles above the strength of anyone at this camp at the time. And the Aurelius family is important, and there are constructs that can allow you to steal Madra, and as long as it's the same type as yours, you absorb that Madra into your body. And so, again, this is another element of cannibalizing your own family members, essentially, to cannibalize their spirit in a way that is helpful to the clan overall. So interesting, morbid, but interesting. And the iron body tempering is different for every person. There is a way to do this, and most people know of this and try to temper their iron bodies to the right way so that it helps them on their journey. So that's good. And then Suriel gets mentions here. And we learned about some of the other angels from the way. And they all have like IEL names. So Suriel, Osriel, Markiel, kind of like angels in I was going to say mythology. I mean religion. Kind of the same way, right? Michael, Azrael, Gabriel, all of them have the same kind of name ending. Same idea with Suriel. And her cloak is the Suriel cloak, and then there's another guy whose name is Azrael, or Osriel, sorry, and another guy who's Markiel or something. So yeah, there's different angel people. In terms of artwork and fan service, the artwork, the frontispiece this time is Ethan and Yaren, and it looks great. I really like it. Ethan has a broom, and he shows off, and he's like, "I am the greatest janitor ever," and I really like him. It reminds me of something else. There's another character who has this like same kind of like ridiculous pomp and circumstance that Ethan has, who also is like that, but I can't remember. The closest thing I can think of is Tekking 101's character in One Piece D&D, Isekai D&D named Old Tony, but they're not the same. Old Tony is a janitor, and he has like paladin powers, but that's not the same type of character. I feel like I've met a character like this in some anime or some cartoon show before. Maybe it was Avatar. I feel like this Ethan's character would fit in like Avatar, but I'm not really sure. I can't remember properly, but I like him a lot, and I think that it's nice that he got the frontispiece. There's a little bit of a bath scene here. It's not gratuitous like in anime, but it is there. And Yeren blushes at mostly naked Linden, so good for Linden. Yeren is a cutie, and she's like really rough around the edges, but she really has a heart of gold. So good for Linden. Works out for him. In terms of a rating, like I said, it's a 5 out of 5. It was super enjoyable. All of the issues that I had with the story were basically fixed. Some were introduced here, but the introduction is pretty minimal. Like the new issues that come up are pretty minimal, and they seem mostly like preference things than they are like actual issues with the writing. And so overall, great stuff. I really enjoyed it. I couldn't stop reading afterwards, so that tells you a lot. It's a great book. I recommend this series to anyone. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys later.